Have you ever looked in the mirror and thought about what exactly makes you, well, you? I mean this in a very literal, physical sense. Obviously you have a head, arms, legs, maybe a nose. But what if I told you that sitting exactly where you are right now, sharing your exact brain and having your exact thoughts, is another entity that is everything you are, except it doesn't have a nose? In philosophy, they call this bizarre entity your nose complement. And it brings up some incredibly strange questions about who we are and how we can even know what parts belong to us. Today, we are diving deep into a fascinating 2016 paper from the journal Mind by David Mark Kovacs, titled Self-Made People. We are going to explore how we might literally be determining our own boundaries just by thinking about them. So, to kick things off, let us unpack this nose complement thought experiment. Why does this imaginary noseless version of me even matter?
It matters because it exposes a massive crack in how we understand our own existence and self-knowledge. Think about it this way. This nose complement includes your brain, your nervous system, your consciousness. It has everything intrinsically required for personhood. Because it shares your brain, it thinks every single thought that you think. So when you think to yourself, I have a nose, you are correct. You are a whole humanoid being. But your nose complement is thinking that exact same thought at the exact same time. And for the nose complement, that belief is entirely false, because it literally does not include a nose. So Kovacs points out that this setup actually merges two distinct philosophical puzzles. The first is the problem of almost persons. If your nose complement has all the mental capacity of a person, is it a person? If you share your physical space with all these almost persons, what makes it the case that your thoughts pick out a person rather than a non-person? And the second is the problem of overlappers. Never mind if the nose complement is legally or morally a person. How do you know that you are the humanoid whole rather than the overlapping part that is just mistaken about having a nose? How do you know you are not the one making the massive error?
That is deeply unsettling when you really chew on it. If we both have the exact same evidence, the exact same memories, the exact same sensory inputs, I have no rational basis to prove I am the one with the nose and not the nose complement. Now, before we go further, I want to clarify something for the listeners who might be familiar with other metaphysical puzzles. Is this the same thing as Peter Unger's famous Problem of the Many from 1980? Because that also deals with boundaries, like how a cloud or a chair does not have a precise edge at the microscopic level.
That is a great distinction to make, and Kovacs is very careful to separate them. Unger's Problem of the Many is fundamentally about boundary vagueness and referential indeterminacy. It is about the fuzzy edges of physical objects where it is unclear which collection of atoms makes the chair. But the puzzles we are talking about today, the problem of almost persons and the problem of overlappers, are not about fuzzy microscopic boundaries. A nose complement is a massive, clearly defined chunk of matter. It is a macro-level entity. The threat here is not indeterminacy, it is massive and widespread error. If you are actually a nose complement thinking you are a whole human, you are just straightforwardly wrong about your gross anatomy. And any solution to this has to respect what Kovacs calls the person constraint. This is the highly plausible assumption that when we use the word I, we are referring to persons. It cannot turn out that we are actually just referring to inanimate chunks of meat. We need a solution that guarantees our I thoughts pick out persons, and that those persons actually have the parts they think they have.
Okay, so we need to save ourselves from this existential nightmare where we might just be horribly mistaken body parts. And Kovacs proposes a solution that he calls the self-making view. The basic pitch here is that our I thoughts and utterances automatically pick out the best candidate referent in our vicinity. Essentially, it is within our power to decide what we refer to when we use the personal pronoun I. How does that mechanism actually work to solve these two puzzles?
To make the self-making view work, Kovacs combines his idea with a concept introduced by Harold Noonan in 1998 called personal pronoun revisionism, or PPR. Noonan argued that the semantics of the word I are inherently restricted to persons. So, if a non-person somehow manages to use the word I, it does not refer to itself. It refers to the person that it overlaps with. Now, combine that with Kovacs' self-making view. You are a whole humanoid, and you have this nose complement overlapping with you. When you say I, you refer to the whole humanoid, which is a person. But what happens when the nose complement thinks I? Because of its shared brain, it thinks the word I, but because of Noonan's PPR, it does not refer to the noseless chunk of matter. It automatically refers up to the whole person, the humanoid. So both you and the nose complement are referring to the same thing, the whole person who definitely has a nose. The mechanism of self-reference automatically ensures that your beliefs about your parts are true. You make yourself the whole humanoid simply through the act of self-reference.
That feels like a very neat magic trick. The nose complement is basically forced to talk about me, the whole person, instead of itself, just because of how the word I functions. But why should we accept that the word I works this way? Usually, we think of I as what philosophers call a pure indexical. If I speak it, it means me, the speaker, automatically, with no wiggle room. But Kovacs challenges this, right? He argues it is an impure indexical. Can you explain the difference and why this is the critical theoretical foundation for his view?
Absolutely. This is the bottom-up motivation for his entire theory. A pure indexical is a word whose reference is completely fixed by the objective context of the utterance, but an impure indexical leaves some flexible space that is guided by the speaker's intentions. Think about the words here and now. If you say it is hot in here, what does here mean? Does it mean this specific corner of the room, the whole room, the building, or the entire city? The objective context alone does not tell you. Your intention, what you are trying to communicate, constrains the reference to the most appropriate candidate. Kovacs argues that I functions exactly like here. It is an impure indexical. When the brain produces an I thought, there are multiple candidates in the physical space. The whole humanoid, the brain itself, the nose complement. But the thought is accompanied by a massive network of beliefs. Like I have a nose, I have 2 arms, I weigh this much. Following David Lewis's theories on mental content and constitutive rationality, the meaning of a term should maximize the rationality and truth of the speaker's beliefs. So, the word I operates like a homing missile. It scans the candidates in the area and automatically locks onto the one that makes the most sense of all those beliefs. It locks onto the whole humanoid.
So by treating I like the word here, Kovacs is saying our intentions and our rational beliefs act like a filter, weeding out the nose complements because referring to them would make all our spatial and anatomical beliefs false. That is the bottom-up linguistic argument. And the top-down motivation is simply that it is an incredibly elegant solution. It solves the metaphysical problem of who we are, while also solving the epistemological problem of how we know it, without relying on some mysterious sixth sense. We know we have noses because the very mechanics of how we refer to ourselves guarantee it. But this elegant solution leads to a fascinating and highly controversial application in the paper regarding body integrity identity disorder, or BIID. This is a real psychological condition where a person feels a profound, distressing mismatch between their mental body map and their physical body. They might deeply believe that their left leg does not belong to them. How does the self-making view apply to this?
This is where the theory gets really radical and pushes our intuitions. Let us apply the self-making mechanism to a BIID patient who sincerely believes that their left leg is not part of them. Their I thoughts are accompanied by a network of beliefs that strictly excludes that leg. So, when their I missile goes looking for the best candidate referent to maximize the truth of their beliefs, it does not lock onto the whole humanoid. It locks onto the leg complement, the part of their body that excludes the leg. Now, here is the wild part. Remember Noonan's personal pronoun revisionism. It says that whatever I successfully refers to must be a person. So, if the BID patient successfully refers to their leg complement, then by definition, that leg complement is a person. The physical humanoid has a left leg, but the actual person residing there does not.
Wait a minute. That is a massive claim. You are saying that under this theory, the actual person is literally just a proper part of the human organism? A literal leg complement? That sounds incredibly counterintuitive, almost like a reductio ad absurdum, a consequence so absurd that it proves the whole theory must be wrong. How does Kovacs justify this structurally? And does he actually bite this bullet?
He absolutely bites the bullet, and he does it very carefully. Structurally, this application relies heavily on a controversial metaphysical assumption called the remainder principle. This principle states that for any object x and y, if x is a proper part of y, then there exists some object z that is composed of exactly the parts of y that do not overlap with x. In plain English, if you have a body and a leg, the principle guarantees that the rest of the body, without the leg, mathematically exists as a distinct physical object. So the candidate is definitely there to be selected. Kovacs openly acknowledges that concluding that some people are literally unseparated limb complements is highly surprising. He knows many philosophers will view this as a reductio, but he pushes back. He argues that this consequence, while weird, is actually somewhat attractive because it weakens a major argument against elective amputation. If the person truly is the leg complement, then amputating the physical leg of the humanoid is not actually mutilating the person. It is just bringing the physical organism into alignment with the actual boundaries of the person. So rather than hiding from this counterintuitive corollary, Kovacs uses it to show that the self-making view has profound, real-world ethical implications.
That is a staggering implication. It shifts the boundary of the person from biology to semantics and self-reference. But obviously, A theory this bold is going to face severe pushback. In Section 5 of the paper, Kovacs addresses several major objections, particularly those raised by Rory Madden and Eric Olson. I want to make sure we cover these thoroughly, because they attack the very foundation of the self-making view. Let us start with Madden's attack on the semantics of the word I. How does Madden challenge the idea that I automatically picks out a person?
Madden attacks Noonan's personal pronoun revisionism directly. Remember, PPR claims that I has a built-in semantic sortal constraint, meaning the dictionary definition of the word restricts it to persons. Madden argues that this is just linguistically false. There is no semantic rule that says only a person can be the referent of I. Furthermore, Madden raises a deeper conceptual objection. How can a non-person, like a nose complement, even attempt to self-refer? If it is not a person, it lacks the subjective agency required to initiate an act of self-reference. If it cannot self-refer, then all this talk about its I thoughts being redirected to the whole humanoid is just nonsense.
And there is another very specific worry from both Olson and Madden regarding inexpressible false beliefs, right? If the nose complement shares my brain, it thinks to itself, I am a nose complement. But according to Kovacs and Noonan, that I automatically refers to the whole humanoid person. So the thought translates to, the whole humanoid is a nose complement, which is obviously false. But more importantly, it means the nose complement is fundamentally incapable of expressing a belief about itself. It is trapped in a semantic prison where every time it tries to talk about itself, the language forces it to talk about me instead. How on earth does Kovacs respond to these intense structural objections?
Kovacs' response is quite brilliant, and it leans heavily into the metaphysics of mind. To the worry about the nose complement being trapped and unable to express its own false beliefs, Kovacs argues that we are fundamentally misunderstanding the nature of the thoughts happening in that physical space. He appeals to the numerical identity of thoughts. There are not two separate thoughts occurring simultaneously, one by the humanoid and one by the nose complement. There is only one single token thought produced by the brain. It is not that the nose complement has its own private mental life that is being semantically hijacked. There is just one mental act, and the mechanism of the impure indexical assigns the referent of that single act to the best candidate, which is the whole humanoid.
So he is essentially saying the critics are double-counting the thoughts. They are imagining the humanoid and the nose complement sitting next to each other in a theater, having separate internal monologues, when in reality, there is only one monologue. But what about the boundary issue? If our intentions can just shrink our boundaries down to a leg complement in the case of BIID, what is stopping someone's eye from referring to something completely absurd, like just their left ear, or a detached corpse? Does the self-making view have any safety rails?
Yes, it does, and this is a crucial piece of Kovacs' defense. He introduces what we can call the thinking parts constraint. The flexibility of the impure indexical is not infinite. To even be a candidate for the referent of I, the entity must include the physical machinery that is generating the thought. It must share the thinking parts, primarily the brain. So while a nose complement or a leg complement is a valid candidate because it includes the brain, a headless torso, a severed ear, or a dead corpse are totally disqualified. They do not have the thinking parts. You cannot self-make yourself into a corpse. This sets a very clear, scientifically grounded safety boundary on the whole self-making process, preventing it from spiraling into total absurdity.
That makes a lot of sense. The brain is the anchor, and the self-making view allows the boundaries to expand or contract around that anchor based on the constitutive rationality of our beliefs, down to the limits of the leg complement, but no further than the brain itself. It is a really tightly constructed defense. As we wrap up, I think it is important to match the tone of Kovacs' own conclusion. He does not plant a flag and say this is the absolute, bulletproof truth of human existence, right?
Exactly. Kovacs is very scientifically prudent. He does not claim that he has entirely destroyed the problem of overlappers or won the debate outright. What he concludes is that the self-making view is a highly promising alternative that deserves serious consideration. It provides a unified, elegant answer to some of the most stubborn overpopulation puzzles in metaphysics without requiring us to invent new laws of physics or mysterious ways of knowing things. It asks us to accept some surprising things, like the status of limb complements, but it justifies those surprises with robust philosophical logic.
It certainly leaves you looking at your own hands and wondering how much your mind is actively claiming them as yours in real time. And it leaves open some fascinating questions, like diachronic self-making. If we can make our boundaries in the present moment, can our intentions shape our identity across time? Can we self-make our past and future? That is an open question that Kovacs leaves for another day. It is a fantastic paper that really stretches the limits of language, metaphysics, and how we define the self. Thank you for walking us through it.
My pleasure. It is definitely one that will keep you thinking long after you take your headphones off.